You got to strip away the past if you're going to move into God's purpose. You know what else you need to do? You got to primer the present. You know, primer is a very, very important part of refinishing anything. I used to skip the primering part. We've all done that, right? Oh, I sanded it real good. I'll just put a coat of paint on there. Until your wife comes out and she looks at it and says, where's the primer? We've got to primer our present. You know what primer does? It prepares the surface for long-lasting transformation. It prepares the surface. You see, for us in our lives, we need to define where we really are in our life, and then we need to accept what God says about it, and then we need to begin priming the present with the reality of God's promises, not our feelings. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, man, I need counsel on this issue. And it never fails. They usually start with this. I feel like, and I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. What did you have for dinner last night? Was it Tex-Mex? Because that could affect how you feel. But I have very few people walk in and say, you know, Shawn, God says this. And so I'm standing on this. You got to primer your present. And how do you do it? Listen, God primers our perspective through his promises. Why? So that the repurposing sticks in our life. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 1:20, he says, for no matter how many promises God has made, they are yes in Christ. You know what that means? That means that exactly what God told Isaiah in Isaiah 61 about who Jesus was going to be and who we are in Isaiah 62 is true because of that statement right there. They are yes in Christ. So let me ask you a question. How much of your life are you priming with God's promises? Don't prime it with your feelings. That's a bad can of primer. Don't prime it with your circumstances. They won't match up. You need to begin to prime your perspective through the promises of God. What promises of God is he wanting to prime over your life? What promises? You know, the last thing we got to do, we got to let God apply the finishing coat. We need to let God apply the final coat. Because here's what happens. We know what the promises of God say, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more next week. We know exactly that we all know we got to strip away the past. We all know we need a really good primer if it's going to stick. But here's what we do. Hey, God, let me have the brush. I think I can paint better than you. God, I want you to paint it this way. And God says, no. I mean, how many of you, if you went to an auction and you bought a piece of furniture and you stripped it away and all of a sudden the furniture started talking back at you and says, no, you don't know how to paint, stupid. It's the same way when we try to say to God, God, listen, I got this. You just let me keep applying the final coat. And God says, no, you got to surrender to my purpose for your life. I bought you back. I have the receipt. It's the cross of Christ. And now I want to do something you never even fathomed that you could ever become because my plans for you are big.